watch him. We watched Ken Yukihiro just before this, so he's 3 seats away from Ken Yukihiro. And yeah, let's take a look at what Craig Wescoe drafted. Is it going to be a white deck? My money is on yes, it is. But there's a Gigantosaurus pulled out the first thing in the pack. Vampire Sovereign and a Vinemare in here, as well as an Enigma Drake. Some good choices.
Oh yeah, those two uncommons I think are better than any common by a decent amount. Like Vampire Sovereign and Vinemare are two great first picks. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see him gravitate towards a white archetype, which he is known to do in basically every format he just loves, and he plays them very well. And, you know, this draft format is a format where white aggro is actually quite good.
That's true.
Red-white aggro is good. I think is the best deck, personally. Black-white Life King is good. So, where he couldn't have been very happy to have his deck yesterday, he will be very happy to have a good version of his deck today.
And you can see, I think he agrees with you, Paulo, there. He took Shock over Vampire Sovereign.
Oh, wow, he did? Yeah, that is extremely surprising to me. I think, I'll go as far as saying that I believe that is wrong. But obviously, if you have a preference, if you really want to be red-white, then you can't take the black card. But I think both Vinemare and Vampire Sovereign are so much better than Shock. And this is not a format where I feel like you have to force archetypes. But if you are forcing an archetype, then obviously, you know, you're paying the price for it when you first pick a common over, you know, one of the best uncommons. And there's another Vinemare, so he could have a very good copy of your favorite deck at this point, the green-white, you know, go big as opposed to go wide.
So he's taking a look through this pack here and looks like to be favoring Marauder's Axe, which he's pulled to the front, as well as a Goblin Motivator, which, of course, that red-white deck wants. So he's going to take the Axe.
Yeah, and that is a card that can go in any deck. It is colorless. It is a bit of a fake colorless card because you're not literally going to put it in every deck. Some decks just don't want the +2/+0 equipment. But it is more versatile. Personally, I would have taken the Vinemare too, but he's already shown he's not interested in that archetype, so it makes sense that he would chip it as well. But now I think he's in a bit of trouble because there's just no good red or even white card. So this might be the point where he has to deviate from his expectation, and that means he's really going to pay the price because not only, you know, does he not have those Vinemares and Vampire Sovereigns, but the people next to him now have them and are incentivized to go in their archetype. So if that is the open color, those people will already kind of be in it.
All right, so he's going to pick up an Enigma Drake here, which does go along with his first pick of Shock. This is a blue-red deck that's focused on spells, instants, and sorcerers being in your graveyard. How do you like that deck in this format?
I think a good version of the deck can be very good. And the good thing about the deck is that the bad versions can also win because you're just an aggressive deck, right? If you have an aggressive deck, you play 2 drops, you know, you attack a bunch, you play a sleep, and then you win the game. I think that's good. If you have a great version of it, like multiple Enigma Drakes, a lot of, you know, good cheap spells, so he does have Shock already, then that can be excellent, yeah. This is a format in which I think basically every color combination is viable, which I think makes for a great format. And yeah, blue-red is just a good combination like any other.
Dipping into white here with Ether Shield Artificer. He just can't stay away. A 3/3 that gives an artifact creature you control +2/+2 and indestructible at the beginning of combat on your turn. So we're kind of experimenting a little bit here with these early picks for Craig. And gosh, there's some good green cards that he's passing. There's a Vivian's Invocation. I can't watch, Paulo.
Yeah, someone is going to be very happy and surprised right after Craig Wescoe, that's for sure. Yeah. Vivian's Invocation is a pretty good card.
It is. It costs 7, but you're getting a very good creature, and you're just killing something else on your opponent's side of the battlefield. But he's going to pick up Goblin Motivator.
Yeah, it's basically like a huge Meteor Golem, right? You get a creature that is probably better than a 3/3, and you still kill anything. You can't kill a Planeswalker with it or an enchantment, but...
Here is something that's pretty interesting. Aerial Engineer he has pulled to the front here, and we know that he just picked up a card, an Ether Shield Artificer, that wants to have a blue-white artifact deck theme to support it. So maybe he's taking this as a signal and saying, hey, maybe I can do blue-white artifacts.
Yeah, he could definitely try to do that. This is not one of my preferred archetypes, but I think this is a format in which any archetype actually works. So it is pretty late for a card that is potentially a 4-mana 4/4 flyer.
Wall of Mist, there's a Take Vengeance, a Snapping Drake, and a Loxodon Line Breaker if he wants to be considering blue-white as his colors. Also a Fountain of Renewal, which is a card that deck will play.
Yeah, it will. I think Fountain of Renewal is a card that you're okay playing. I think at this point I would probably be looking at Take Vengeance myself, but Take Vengeance is a card that is very polarizing. Some people like it all the time, and some people only like it in very defensive decks because it doesn't kill a blocker, it only kills an attacker. And I know Ben Stark described it as a card that ranges from good to great. He said it's never bad. So I remember we were having this discussion, like, do you even want like this card in an aggressive deck? And then he said it ranges from good to great.
Okay.
So personally, I think it ranges from medium to great. There are decks in which I wouldn't play it, but it's rare.
Fiery Finish is the pickup here for Craig. Pretty good removal spell, but it's on the expensive end, and it only hits creatures. And we've been going kind of blue-white, maybe a little bit of red here and there, so we haven't quite settled on a direction. Here's a Sky Scanner, the perfect card for somebody who's not quite sure what they're doing.
Yeah, that is true. He doesn't really know what colors he is. He knows he does have artifact synergies. He has 2 already.
That's true.
The Aerial Responder and the Engineer. So that would be a good pickup. He does have to pass on the Stone Quarry, which is also a good card for someone who's seemingly Jeskai.
Yes.
Without really a direction at this point, but I think Trusty Pack Beast is probably a card that goes better with what he currently has because he doesn't seem to be the completely aggressive Weenie deck, Trumpet Blast, Inspired Charge type of deck.
Pledge.
Yeah, Knight's Pledge. He seems to be more the Artifact blue-white type of deck, but he takes the Falcon anyway. You really can't get away from his white Weenie roots.
No. Rustwing Falcon, the pickup there. Salvager of Secrets still left in this pack. We saw Ken Yukihiro pick up quite a few of those as in his draft a little earlier this morning.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of Ken's draft. It looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But also I didn't know there were this many Vine Mares around, and that does not look like a card he wants to face. So hopefully it can dodge the multiple Vine Mare person. Because, maybe the person opened Vine Mare, they could have 3 already, and it's only pack 1.
Wow. The dream!
Yeah, that is the dream.
All right, we're just rounding out our picks here, and pack number 1 for Craig Wescoe. In our first draft of the morning here at Grand Prix Minneapolis, Infernal Scarring left in this pack, and a Forest. Make a statement, Craig. Take the Forest. Oh, well. Infernal Scarring it is, and a Wall of Mist is the last card left in the pack. So we're going to take a look at what Craig has put together here in just a moment. We've got white cards, we've got a couple of red cards, and we've got blue cards. Some which care about artifacts, and some which care about instants and sorceries. So we're kind of a little bit unfocused at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I try to play a constructed deck. I really like building new decks with new mechanics, and I'm like, okay, I have all those cards that care about this, or those cards that care about that. My deck's perfect. And I look, well, it's 80 cards. Like, now I have to cut 20 of them, and nothing works because I don't have enough for any of the mechanics.
Right.
So we'll see if he decides to go for the more, white-red approach or the blue-white approach. He's probably not going to end up in Jeskai. I'm guessing it will just... He has kind of solidified himself in white at this point in his mind.
Sure.
And then he'll decide his second color based on what he opens in this pack. But he does have an Enigma Drake, so depending on what he opens, he could end up in blue-red.
And the reason that Jeskai is kind of an unfavorable deck is because both of those color combinations, red-white and red-blue, want to be aggressive, and playing 3 colors just doesn't go well with that either of those strategies.
Yeah, I think 3 colors doesn't necessarily go well a lot of the time, especially, none of the cards he has are cards you'd be happy splashing. Like, you don't want to splash for Enigma Drake and Shock. That just doesn't really work. And you also don't want to be playing Manalith in your aggressive decks, for example. Now, if you have enough artifact synergies, which, he might end up with, then yeah, that's a card you can potentially play. But normally I steer away from 3-color decks in aggressive decks, and red-white is a very aggressive deck. Like, you can't play 3 colors and a 1-mana Falcon in your deck. Like, that doesn't, it doesn't strike me as a successful combination.
It's really interesting to watch Craig here, who first picked a Shock, if you're just joining us. Pack 1, pick 1 over several more powerful cards. I think everybody would agree on that, in cards like Vine Mare and Vampire Sovereign, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Shock is a card that I don't even like that much. Obviously, it's Shock, right? It's good. But there have been formats in which Shock was the first pick, and you were like, yes, Shock. Yeah, I got the best common. And I don't think this is it in this draft format. I think, Lich's Caress is much better than Shock. I think Essence Scatter is better than Shock. I think Electrify is better than Shock. So Luminous Bones is better than Shock too. So Shock might not even be in the top 5 commons. And he passed cards that I believe were better than any common, which are Vine Mare and Vampire Sovereign. So that was really surprising. So it's either a question of, we defer on how good Shock is, or he just really wants to be red or does not want to be black and green, which I think is what happened. I think if you go ask him, Craig, do you think Shock is better than Vine Mare? He'll say, obviously not, but I think red is much better than green, so I'm willing to take, the downgrade in this pick to being the colors that I believe are the best. And this is actually an interesting approach because this is a GP that, is the week before the PT.
Yep.
It's the 25th anniversary PT. It's a PT that means a lot. And this is a format that will not be part of the PT. So any testing that you do for this tournament is not going to help you in the PT at all. And I saw a lot of players who are like, okay, I day two'd. I didn't really expect to do that. How do I draft this format? I've never done it.
Yeah.
I've just been playing Legacy all day. And then someone tells them, well, this is the best archetype. And they're like, okay, I'll just force that. Like this happened, in my groups, in my Magic groups, like Thiago Saporito, a lot of Brazilian players are like, please help me. I don't know. And then someone tells them, well, red-white's the best archetype.
Yeah.
They'll open a green card and then a red card. We're like, well, red-white's the best, so I might as well just take that.
Okay, here we go. Pack number 2 for Craig Wescoe, Psy Master Thopterist. In here, if he wants to kind of consider that blue-red route or the blue-white artifact route, Cavalry Drill Master, probably a 2-drop he's pretty fond of, a Spark Tongue Dragon, and there's another Vine Mare.
They keep coming. It's like the universe is taunting you at this point.
But Psy would go in his blue-white deck pretty well.
Yeah, I think normally we saw a Factor Fiction actually yesterday.
We did.
Like, is Psy a great pick one or is it a trap? And we kind of concluded, or at least I concluded, I don't know why. I don't know if you were all in agreement, but that Psy was kind of a trap. But this is spec 2 already. He already has artifact-themed cards, and he's already kind of in blue-white, which is the artifact color combination. So it makes sense that he would take that.
With the machine, there's a card that goes in the artifact deck, though I've never seen it cast. So come on, Craig, give us a show. We've got a Divination in here, totally lost, an Aven Windwage, and there's another Ether Shield Artificer as well. So that would go well with the Thopters that he could potentially make with Psy.
Yeah, I like the Ether Shield Artificer quite a bit. It makes bad cards very good. Like, Field Creeper. It's not a good card, it's just a 2-1, but when it attacks as a 4-power indestructible creature, that's really good. And a 4-mana 3/3 isn't that bad either. Like the body on the card is okay. So he is kind of short on removal, especially if he ends up not playing that Shock, which I think he won't. So taking the Dwindle is okay too.
It's interesting. There's a Declared Dominance in that pack, which we saw be a one-sided board wipe yesterday.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of good green cards around.
Just kind of lamenting as they pass on by. Scholar of Stars in this pack. Ooh, there's a mirror image. We saw Ken Yukihiro pick up 4 of those for his deck and an Essence Scatter, which he might be very happy to see a lot of players really valuing that card pretty highly.
Yeah, I think that card is excellent. I think it's the best blue common, and I think it's one of the top 5 commons in the set. I don't know if it's necessarily what he wants for his deck.
Sure.
He doesn't really have an Essence Scatter deck, which doesn't mean he won't play it, but it does mean he's not super thrilled to see it.
Say you're going hard on this blue-white artifact deck theme. Do you take the Scholar of Stars or the Essence Scatter there?
I think I still take Essence Scatter, especially because a lot of the synergy cards cost 4 mana. The card he already has, I believe he has 2 copies of. I think he took the second one. I'm not actually sure. What is it called? The Aether Shield Artificer.
Oh, yeah.
That costs 4. And then Blue-White Rare also costs 4. So you do end up with a lot of 4-mana cards, and the Scholar of Stars is the worst of them all.
Omniscience.
Yeah, you can
in this pack. There you go.
You won't have a problem casting your 4-drops. They'll all be free.
Knight's Pledge pulled to the front. Another mirror image. Yeah, I think he's going to... Oh, look at the cat stamp. Oh, cute. I didn't notice it until now.
Oh, there's a cat stamp?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
I love it.
Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Cat, 100%.
100%?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would take a small Pomeranian because that's the cat of dogs. But if I had to choose, how about you?
I really like both, but if I have to choose between them, I like cats more.
Oh, great.
But I'm a both person.
Divination,
but cats.
Make a Stand, Scholar of Stars left in this pack here. What does he want this time?
I mean, also he doesn't necessarily have a Divination type deck. He could, yeah, I don't think he has a make a stand type deck either.
No.
Which is kind of a problem if it becomes a common thing. Like you don't have an anything deck. You don't have an Essence Scatter or a make a stand, and your white decks are usually make a stand decks, and this isn't it. And your blue decks are usually Essence Scatter decks and Divination decks. This isn't it either. So what is it? What type of deck is it? Is it like a Tezzeret deck? Sure, but you're not gonna see that. You need to be a commons deck.
Take Vengeance, Highland Lake, and Gearsmith Guardian, some options for Craig here in this pack. And Gearsmith Guardian is going to be the pickup, which is, your top end in this blue-white artifact deck, usually.
Yeah, the card is a lot better than I originally expected. It is very reliably a 5/5 for 5 mana and has some artifact synergies. There is a downside to being an artifact, of course, especially in an artifact deck. They bring in cards like Smell or Invoke the Divine, and having your 5-drop be killed by a 1-mana spell at instant speed is pretty disappointing. But I think it's a card that most people would be happy to play if they're in their deck. That's the declared dominance still in the pack?
There.
Oh, wow. That's very surprising.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that either because...
People just strongly dislike green in this table, it seems. I do think green is the worst color in sealed, but I think draft is very self-correcting.
Yeah.
So it's very rare that there's, a color that is worse than the others by a lot in draft, because the worse the color is, the fewer people you have taking cards from that color, usually. So it kind of self-corrects in that way. So it's not something that you have to avoid.
Totally Lost, Rogue's Gloves, and he's going to go for Totally Lost here.
Ooh, that is the theme of his deck. He's totally lost. We found it.
Oh, sick burns. Pack Feast. Okay, so that does go in the deck, but I'm not entirely sure what he's getting back. I guess if a Gearsmith Guardian dies or something. There's a Restwing Falcon, and he picked one a little more highly than we expected last pack, so maybe he'll take that again here.
Yeah, I think that was mostly when he had the idea to, be still the red-white deck, which he still can be. But I think this is an interesting pick because I think, he actually willed the Artificer, which I think is quite good for him.
Yeah, there's still a lot that he could take potentially in this pack here.
Yeah, I think at this point he's kind of abandoned any pretense of being red. Like, he's just not going to play the Shock and the Drake. So he doesn't really have to value the dual land as highly. He's not going to splash unless he opens something great. But I think we're in a spot where, he recognizes that on power level alone, his deck isn't great. Like, obviously, he doesn't have bomb rares. He has Tide, that's not a bomb. Doesn't have bomb uncommons. So he has to win the game somehow, right? And those cheap flyers are how he's going to win the game. So I think he's going to have a blue-white flyers deck with an artifact sub-theme. It's not going to be completely focused on artifacts, but...
I guess I'm a little confused why he didn't take the Ether Shield Artificer there if,
he didn't?
No, he took Divination.
Oh, wow. That really does confuse me. I guess you're playing Falcons, and then... Yeah,
that's true.
You need to draw more cards somehow, because the Falcons alone are not going to do it.
Scholar of Stars here. So he's got a fair number of Scholar of Stars in this deck. Highland Lake, there we go. Shock, get in the deck.
Maybe he's still considering the possibility of... Oh, no, he can't be going white-red. Yeah.
No.
And he can't be going blue-red either.
No.
So I guess he doesn't actually have this many artifact creatures. He has Skyscanner, and he has the Gearsmith that doesn't really need to be pumped. So the Artificer isn't going to do much for him. But I feel like he has Sai in his deck, and he has enough artifact synergies already that he should just bank on getting artifacts in pack 3. I think that is how his deck is going to come together. Like, it's not that hard to get Field Creeper very late. It's not a good card, like other Skyscanners. So I feel like he should have focused on that aspect of his deck and maybe try to get the goods in the third pack, so to speak.
So he's going to have access to some card draws. Got a couple of divinations. He has those Scholar of Stars, 2 copies of Dwindle, I believe, and there's Sai Master Thopterist that we saw at the front there for a second. That is a nod to the artifact sub-theme that the deck has. But as you pointed out, it's not that heavy on artifacts.
No, it isn't. And, it might end up becoming a Falcon Night Splash deck. That can...
Yeah.
I want to say cheese the opponent out. That kind of has a negative connotation in games. You're like, oh, you're cheesing, you're doing something that is not supposed to be done or whatever. But I really think it describes what it is. It's like, well, your opponent has a bunch of dragons and powerful bombs and even like Vine Mares, which you saw a lot of. and you just go, oh, Roasting Falcon, Night Splash, attack you.
Yeah.
And you kind of turn the game into the sub-game. Right? Do you have removal for my 3/4 flyer on turn 2, or do you not? And then if they don't, they just lose, regardless of what is in their deck. So that is a way for a theoretically lower power level deck to beat a high power level deck. And that seems to be the approach he's going for.
Aerial Engineer is hiding kind of in this pile as well, which is a pretty powerful card if you've got an artifact in play, 4/4 flyer.
Oh yeah, I mean 4 mana, 4/4 flyer is very, very powerful.
I mean, you know, we can't forget about the fact that, like you said, just a Rustwing Falcon Tiny Flyers blue-white deck has been good throughout the history of Magic and is playable in M19 as well.
Oh yeah, and I mean Skyscanner, you know, a lot of the time people look at it and they're like, well, it's a blocker. But if you have enough flying attackers, then, you know, it's also an attacker. And, you know, Evan Mage and any cards, like, he has Snapping Drake as well. So he does seem to be pretty solidly in blue-white with an artifact sub-theme here.
Okay, getting ready for pack number 3 here, our first draft of the morning. M19 Core Set Draft. We won't be seeing draft at the Pro Tour, so if you're a fan of draft, get your fix now because this is it. I'm excited to watch it as well. I've been having a ton of fun in this format, both in draft and in sealed.
Oh, wow.
With Demanding Dragon here in pack number 3. Aviation Pioneer, though, goes with what his deck is interested in doing. You get a Thopter out of the deal and another creature to boot. Militia Bugler also does the same thing.
Yeah, Demanding Dragon is such a strong card that at this point, if my deck is good, I'm not even thinking about it, right? I'm just blue-eyed, I'm just going to beat that. But if my deck is bad, I'm starting to think, how many blue and white cards do I actually have? Like, is there a chance I can change colors? You know, the answer is probably no, but it has to be on your mind because this is a card that will win the game single-handedly.
Sure.
So when your deck is bad, it is the kind of thing that you need to do. But I think at this point, he's just way too deep in blue-white. He doesn't have enough red. He will just end up with, you know, 15 playables if he were to play red as a main color, which is unfortunate.
So Aviation Pioneer, the pickup there. Lightning Strike in this pack as well as, another Dragon. There's a Dwindle at the back of Dragon's Horde. Oh.
Ooh, that goes very well with Demanding Dragon because it's a dragon.
Excellent analysis.
Yes. That is why I'm here.
Aegis of the Heavens, he's stopping on that for a second, locks it on Line Breaker. But I guess Dwindle, I mean, if you need removal, it kind of is. It's the best blue can do here in this format.
Yeah, that's true. And he could splash the Lightning Strike. He has a dual land.
That's true. So you're not willing to splash the Shock, but you're more in on Lightning Strike?
Oh, yeah, because I think Shock, you know, doesn't kill a lot of the things you want to kill in the middle to late game, and Lightning Strike kills a lot more things. It's still not a great splash, mind you. It's not like, you know, it's not a Banefire, obviously. Right. I'm not, you know, going through a lot of hoops to splash it, but if I have like 3 duo lands, I'll play Lightning Strike, but I won't play Shock.
Mystic Archaeologist here, which he's got to be pretty happy to see at this point.
Yeah, that is a fantastic card, not just for him, for everyone who's blue. You know, you can play it on turn 2 and it attacks and blocks, but you don't really want to do that. Like, a lot of the time, if you're playing against a removal-heavy deck and you expect the games to go long, you even wait until you have 7 mana so you can play it and draw 2 cards immediately. I don't think that's going to be the approach for Craig. He's kind of short on 2 drops. He has an aggressive deck. So he's probably just going to play it and then, you know, try to attack once or twice and eventually draw 2 cards. If it dies, it dies. But it's going to be good for him no matter what.
Aven Windmage, Knight's Pledge, and a Star-Crowned Stag in this pack here. Ooh, another Draconic Disciple going around the table. We just saw him pass another one. All right, so 3 good options here for Craig.
Yeah, I really don't think he's going to take Knight's Pledge here, even though he does have 2 of the Falcons, which is the card that goes very well with it. He can use both the Aven Windmage and the Star-Crowned Stag in a spot like this. Both cards would be good in his deck. He does have a ton of 4s already, 2.
Okay.
Scholar of Stars, you know, the Engineer, the gold card. So I understand taking the Windmage here. I think that's correct.
Yeah, 4s is where you can kind of get gummed up in this format, I feel.
Yeah, there are a lot of 4s.
Bone to Ash. A Johnny's Last Stand. Okay.
Ooh, Nicol Bolas.
Not quite. Just the fleeting memory of Nicol Bolas.
Yeah.
At Johnny's Last Stand, whenever a creature planeswalker you control dies, you can sacrifice to get a 4/4 avatar creature token with flying. I always think it's an angel, an avatar.
Oh, it's not an angel?
I know, I just read that and I was like, oh wait, it's an avatar? Okay.
Oh, it's probably a typo. It's an angel.
We'll just call it an angel.
Yeah.
And if you ever discard it, by the way, somebody's, fell spectering you, you get a 4/4 avatar as long as you have a planes. Don't forget that.
That has to be the worst. Getting a
oh yeah,
playing a discard spell and having your opponent discard that. It's just unbelievable.
Take Vengeance. Another Divination and a Meandering River here.
Yeah, I think he seems to be higher on Divination than I am. That's for sure in a deck like this. I like Divination a lot in control decks, but it doesn't seem like he has a control deck, so I wouldn't really be interested in it. I like to see either to take Vengeance or the Swift Claw, or even the Dual Land over the Divination here, but he disagrees. He clearly likes Divination a lot more than I do. And I think that is kind of a common theme, liking Divination more than I do. If you... the Whitlow Leech.
Yeah. Ooh, what? A Horizon Scholar still in this pack?
Yeah.
All right, we're kind of doing it.
I'm just going to flicker through all the Baloth and what is it called? Sangolin. Is it Sangolin? There is a Golem that...
Is there really?
It's very old. Yeah. It's like the original Dodecapod. It's something Golem. I don't know what it's called.
Rich is over on Card Viewer for us.
Yeah.
Aviation Pioneer. Okay, so...
That's a really good pickup
what he wants right here.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that those artifacts don't really work with Psi. So this card is an artifact, but, it's not as synergistic as it could be. But it also makes your Gearsmith Guardians 5/5s because it's blue. So that part is good.
I'm just sitting over here dreaming of the green-red deck that could have been.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll probably get to see it playing for 3-0 at some point.
Yeah, we just saw Sarkhan's Unsealing get passed a couple of picks ago. Dwarven Priest, Invoke the Divine. How do you like the Dwarven Priest in a non-life gain deck?
I think it depends on your deck. And more than that, it depends on what you're playing against. So if you're in a racing situation with your flyers, then I think it's really good. Especially that has, several cards that make multiple creatures. So he does get to gain like 4 or 5 life pretty easily if he's just racing in the air instead of trading. And then playing a 2/4 and gaining 4 or 5 life is huge in a racing situation. But it's better in a life game, in a controller's deck.
Frilled Sea Serpent, the pickup for Craig here. As we round out our last few picks from pack, and number 3. Gosh, those Scholar of Stars are a dime a dozen this draft. He's got about 5 of them at this point.
Yeah, I really like Rogue's Gloves here. He has 2 Falcons already. He has cheap flyers. He has 2 Pioneer. The card that makes someone one top there.
Pioneer.
Yeah, that one. He has, Psi, which is a good synergy with it both ways. You got a token, you can immediately enchant the token, equip the token rather. So I think that card is going to be good for him.
Well, there's the Knight's Pledge that we wanted for our Restwing Falcons, but I mean, is he going to end up playing those Falcons still in this deck, do you think?
Oh, he better. He was I mean, if you're going to take them over
That's
good cards, I feel like you have to. I would be very disappointed if he doesn't. I think he will. I think he has enough of an aggressive deck. He has enough ways of suiting them up. He has Night Splash, he has Marauder's deck, he has Rogue's Gloves. He has a lot more flyers. So he will get a critical mass of flyers. And I think the Falcons will be good in his deck. It will be the way he wins, probably. Because it's not going to be on power level.
So what do you give his deck for a grade overall after watching that draft?
Well, that's a tricky question. Because am I analyzing just the deck or what could have been?
Just the deck.
I think the deck is like a 4.5.
Okay.
But if I compare it to what I saw in the table, then I think it's like a 3.
Sure.
Because I think this is a spot in which Craig was maybe, a victim of his own success in a way, because he's done so well with white decks. Or, in any format, it's amazing. You're like, well, white is clearly unplayable in this format, and then he goes in, top 16s, top 8s with a white deck. Or like, what just happened here?
Right.
How did this happen? And he's been so good with this archetype that I think he might have forced it a little bit too hard and completely avoided green, which was the best color to be in. So he could have had a great deck. And instead he has a mediocre deck, so that has to be hurting a little bit. But at the same time, I feel like he drafted the cards that he needed to draft to execute the strategy that he wanted. He has the cheap flyers, he has the equipment, he has the enchantment, so he can definitely win here.
All right, well, we'll find out what happens. One more draft to watch, and then the matches. Stay put.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
We've just been debating what has happened more times, a shock killing a Psychotog, or a Magic player sleeping in the airwall closet overnight at a Grand Prix.
Yeah, so people used to sleep very frequently in the tournament hall itself, to save money on hotel or other lodging costs. But actually in the airwall is something I've never experienced it or seen it happen. But, in Magic history with as many Grand Prix as there have been, you've seen just about everything.
Okay, so you have it at like 0.05% of Grand Prix.
Hard for a shock to kill a Psychotog. So I'm going to I'll take the other one.
All right, so we've got another draft coming up for you right now. We've watched Craig Wescoe draft. He's blue-white. We watched Ken Yukihiro draft. He's blue-black. Pretty far apart from each other, a nice spreading out of the blue cards. If you wondered where the divinations went, they all ended up with Craig Wescoe. But we're going to watch Kentaro Yamamoto draft. And Kentaro is a 3-time Pro Tour Top 8 competitor. He's a Team Series winner.